Our college football predictions continues with our top 25 rankings based on our win-loss predictions revealed over the past couple of days. To see where I placed your favorite team and others, make sure to check out all of my YouTube shorts and my long-form video recapping my predictions. Anyways, without further ado, here are my top 25 rankings for the upcoming season. First, we'll cover teams that just missed the cut. Louisville and Virginia Tech will try to keep pace with the top 4 teams in the ACC, Florida State, Clemson, NC State, and Miami. In Jeff Brohm's first year at Louisville, the Cardinals surprised last year, starting the season 10-1. The defense returned 6 starters and the schedule is manageable. Virginia Tech ended 2023 winning 5 of 7 and doubling their win count from 2022. The Hokies returned 17 starters and the schedule is there for them to find success. In the Big Ten, there are a couple of tiers. Obviously, it's Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, Penn State at the top. Then it's these 4, Iowa, Wisconsin, Washington, and Nebraska, and we can wrap Rutgers into this group as well as USC, who we'll cover in a second. I said it in my Big Ten video, but any order of these 6 teams would make sense, especially given how close they are together. Perhaps even more wide open is the Big 12 Conference. There's 7 teams that have a serious chance at the conference championship: Utah, Oklahoma State, Arizona, and Kansas State, and then these 3, Kansas, West Virginia, and Iowa State. There's lots of parity amongst the top of the conference, a testament to its depth, but also its apparent lack of a true frontrunner and a national contender. The group of 5ers is going to be very interesting, and it matters more than ever with an automatic bid to the playoffs on the line. I have Memphis at 26 and Liberty at 25. Both winning 11 games. Both teams return plenty of proven pieces on offense. The Flames return quarterback Kaden Salter, who accumulated almost 4,000 all-purpose yards. I do see Boise State getting that bid, more on that later. Arizona and Kansas State come in at 23 and 24. Arizona finished on a 7-game win streak. They returned quarterback Noah Fafita and 12 starters from 2023. Kansas State returns 12 starters as well, most of them on the defense, and both of them will be competitive, but the margin of error will be slim in a tightly compacted race for the Big 12 championship. Perhaps anything but a championship game appearance will be a disappointment for both programs, however, this season. USC comes in at 22. Lincoln Riley faces some pressure amongst the fans, but they do have a manageable schedule, missing Ohio State, Oregon, and getting Wisconsin, Penn State, and Notre Dame all at home. Texas A&M and Oklahoma come in at 20 and 21. They're both kind of in no man's land in the SEC. They're going to be a half step or 2 behind the conference favorites, but they'll be ahead of Kentucky, Auburn, Florida, and the bottom dwellers. In terms of win-loss records and rankings, Texas A&M has the edge simply because of its conference schedule and is more favorable than that of Oklahoma's, and the Aggies' impressive performance in the transfer portal, placing 4th in the nation. Miami and Clemson will go stride for an ACC championship game berth. Obviously, Miami brings in quarterback Cameron Ward from Washington State, as well as Damian Martinez from Oregon State. We'll see how those newcomers perform. And I said this before my ACC video, but I wasn't too impressed about quarterback Cade Klubnik this season. There's going to be pressure on him as he failed to bring Clemson back to the national title picture last year, and an underwhelming spring certainly won't help. They also bring in 0 transfers in a college football world that is constantly evolving. To succeed in the game is to play the game, and the transfer portal is a big aspect of it. And no, I don't want to hear fans saying, "Oh, well, Clemson doesn't need transfers because they produce talent." Newsflash, all of the schools are constantly producing and improving their athletes day by day. And they're using the transfer portal as well. I mean, how does Clemson expect to contend when literally every single team in the nation has an advantage over them thanks to the transfer portal? Fortunately, Clemson's schedule is manageable provided they survive the first 5 weeks of the season. Boise State I have at 18 and representing the group of 5 in the college football playoff. USC transfer quarterback Malachi Nelson comes in and Mountain West Player of the Year Ashton Jeanty returns. Aside from an early trip to Oregon, the Broncos should run the table, getting Washington State and Oregon State at home and not having to play Fresno State, Air Force, or Colorado State, 3 of the top dogs in the Mountain West beside them. Oklahoma State and Utah are interesting. The Cowboys returned 18 starters from last year's team that made the Big 12 championship game. Utah returns star quarterback Cameron Rising. Neither of them have to deal with Oklahoma or Texas. I have the Cowboys winning the regular season because they play Utah in Stillwater, and I think they can win that game. But it's always hard to replicate it again, especially in a neutral site. And in the Big 12 championship, I do believe that Utah can get revenge. It's going to be a dogfight the entire year with so much parity atop the conference, and we're probably going to see confusion with the tiebreakers like we did at the end of last season. Nonetheless, whoever wins the conference will get a bye in the college football playoff, assuming a group of 5 team doesn't go undefeated and pass the Big 12 champion in the rankings. NC State's an interesting case because they gained quarterback Grayson McCall in the transfer portal. The offense will be sneakily good behind an experienced offensive line, not to mention the return of wide receiver Casey Concepcion. The Wolfpack tend to do very well in flying under the radar as they won 26 games the last 3 seasons when starting the season unranked. They are also only one of 5 teams to have won at least 8 games in the past 4 seasons. Now we move on to the serious national contenders, and you're going to see a lot of Big Ten and SEC teams on here because you already know the committee will do all they can to make sure as many teams from those 2 conferences make it into the playoff. Missouri have 9, LSU at 13, and Tennessee at 15. These 3 schools seem to be a step behind the top 4 teams in the conference, but expectations are high and at least one of these teams should sneak into the playoffs. Mizzou returns 14 starters and has one of the best wideout rooms in the nation. They also have, I'd say, the easiest conference schedule out of these 3 teams. LSU will contend after revamping its coaching staff and a focus on improving the defense. There are unknowns about their backfield, however, but Tennessee faces even more questions, especially in defense at linebacker and in the secondary. Tennessee will be a young team, so we'll see how they'll develop throughout the year. Florida State I have at 10th. They're the clear leaders in the ACC, and I'm more confident saying that after the conclusion of this spring. Mike Norvell has turned this program around nicely, and the Seminoles retained all 10 assistant coaches from last season. The Seminoles bring in a ton of transfers, including DJ Uyongalele, and they should be just fine come playoff time. Michigan comes in at 8, Penn State at 11. They're both kind of in a tier of their own in the Big Ten. Clearly, I have USC, Iowa, and all the other teams expected to finish around the middle of the conference, but a half step behind Ohio State and Oregon. For Penn State, they simply beat the teams they should and lose to the teams they should lose to. They've only won 1 game against teams ranked 21st or higher in their last 11 games. They did hire a new offensive coordinator with a proven track record, but until I see Penn State win the big games, I'm hesitant to move them into the playoff field, and I bet the selection committee will feel the same way. Michigan's also in some trouble. They only have 5 returning starters with a new head coach. There are major questions around the offense, so the Wolverines will have to rely on their defense to win games. They missed Penn State on the schedule, but they do have to play Texas in the non-conference, Oregon, the defending national runner-ups in Washington on the road, and also Ohio State on the road. I mean, where is there a chance for all the new players to develop and gain momentum this season? On the bright side, the defense should keep Michigan afloat, and an at-large bid for the playoffs is well within reason. Notre Dame comes in at 7. They're an interesting case because I don't see many people see them as a national contender threat, but many people have them in the top 7 or 8. The schedule, albeit no cupcake, is easier than most years for the Irish. They have to play at Texas A&M and USC. Neither team is a serious contender for the championship, although both teams will have a decent home field advantage. Notre Dame also gets Florida State, but at home. And besides those 3 games, the rest of the schedule shouldn't be too much of a challenge. It doesn't really matter if they finish undefeated or not, because it's impossible for them to earn a bye into the playoffs anyways. Marcus Freeman has emphasized the recruiting aspect of the game, something missing from Brian Kelly's approach, and fans are excited. At 5 and 6, Ole Miss and Alabama. Alabama will be without coach Nick Saban for the first time since 2006. In his place is Kevin DeBoer from the Washington team that made the national championship a year ago. Quarterback Jalen Milroe returns and will have plenty of time in the pocket behind an experienced offensive line. The Crimson Tide should be fine. They have pieces in place to compete at a national level. Ole Miss will have arguably the best roster in program history thanks to ranking first in the transfer portal. Lane Kiffin stacked his team all around, and it helps that the Rebels return 14 starters. On the schedule, the Rebels miss both Alabama and Texas, and Georgia and Oklahoma come to Oxford, Mississippi. All in all, you can't ask for a much better schedule in the loaded conference, and just like Alabama, Ole Miss will have the talent to contend come playoff time, even if it means missing out on the first round bye. Now we shift gears into the top 4 teams, and these teams are in a league of their own. They're the heavy favorites for the national title, and every single ranking I've seen places these teams in the top 4. Be on the lookout for my video in 2 days where I break down the rankings for all 134 teams across 5 different sources including Athlon, ESPN, Lindy Sports, and USA Today. Lanning is a crafty coach heading into his 3rd year at Oregon. The Ducks replace quarterback Bo Nix with Dylan Gabriel from Oklahoma. Ohio State will have one of the best quarterback, running back, wideout trios in the nation with Kansas State transfer Will Howard, Travion Henderson, and Emeka Egbuka. The Buckeyes return 15 starters, but Georgia returns 17. Quarterback Carson Beck returns, who will be a heavy Heisman favorite for 2024, and the Bulldogs also placed first in the recruiting this offseason. And don't forget about the Longhorns. They return quarterback Quinn Ewers, and their front defensive 7 will be a problem for all their opponents this fall. Despite having to play at Michigan, get this, Texas does not have to play against Alabama, Ole Miss, Missouri, LSU, or Tennessee. That's 5 of the 6 top teams of the conference excluding themselves that they do not have to play. And for Georgia, yeah, they come to Austin. Texas has arguably the easiest conference schedule, and they will definitely benefit from that. that. I see the scenario that I mentioned for Oklahoma State and Utah happening with these 4 teams as well. Oregon and Texas host Ohio State and Georgia, and I think they can win the regular season matchups and the regular season conference title. But in the rematch at the neutral site, I do think that both Ohio State and Georgia can get revenge and first round byes in the playoffs. But no matter what happens, don't be surprised to see these teams meet for a 3rd time in the season in the national semifinals. I see that happening, and I'll show you my entire bowl projections in my next video tomorrow. But with that, thanks for watching. Be on the lookout for my bowl projection video tomorrow, as well as the consensus top 134 rankings the day after that. Subscribe so you don't miss out on that content, and have a good one.